What's up, guys? This is The Perspective. I'm here to talk to you today about the drama going on in Washington, D.C. over the debt ceiling. Now, what is the debt ceiling? Well, basically, the United States government, to no surprise, spends way more money than it gets in tax revenue. So, it's always going into debt. Now, the amount of debt that it goes into, it has to pay off with interest. Now, how does the U.S. government pay off its debt that it owes with interest? Well, it just takes out more loans, goes into more debt. Now, eventually, this amount of debt just keeps rising and rising and rising until it hits the debt ceiling, which is the legal amount passed by Congress that the United States government is allowed to go into debt. So, that is getting ready to come up. The United States government is getting ready to come up. I think it's October 16th when the debt ceiling is going to be reached and the U.S. Treasury is going to be out of money to pay off bills, and not just bills, like anything that the government does, basically. Okay, so what's happening now? Where do we go from here? Well, typically, Congress comes together, both of them, both sides, Republicans and Democrats, and agree to raise the debt ceiling until next time comes around, it's time to vote again and raise the debt ceiling. But now Republicans are upset because the Democrats have been pretty much running the government themselves. They're using budget reconciliation. They're not really seeking bipartisanship as much. So Mitch McConnell, who's the leader in the Senate, got together with the rest of the Republicans and decided we're not going to help them pass a law that raises the debt ceiling. So essentially they said we're going to let the government default on its loans and its debts. Now, if the government defaulted on its debts, what would happen? Well, essentially, if the government defaults, it means it misses payment or has to make a delayed payment or a late payment. Investors start raising their eyebrows because people who are buying the debts, or people who are buying the government's debt and who are loaning the government money, essentially, they are expecting to get that money back, which is why, with interest, which is why they keep giving money to the government in the first place. So if all of a sudden it became a question of whether or not the government was going to be able to pay off that debt, well, what happens? Well, interest rates go up. So the amount to discourage debt from being taken out, the amount of interest that one would have to pay back, the government would have to pay back on loans that it takes out would be higher. And it would be felt all over the country. Interest rates would just generally rise. The amount of money of interest on credit cards, the amount of money on home loans, bank loans, auto loans, and essentially also small business loans, that's a big one. Essentially, that would mean that there's less money in the economy because we live in a debt economy, an economy where Americans, they take out debt to be able to afford things today that they can't or that they couldn't otherwise. So if that were the case, there would be a lot less money in the economy and people would start to feel the economy shrinking, and that would be bad for everyone. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. The Republicans have already pretty much caved to the Democrats at this point, and that's because raising the debt ceiling is a bipartisan issue. I was told that the Republican Party was supposed to be the party of fiscal responsibility, and I don't think that they are. Even deciding not to raise the debt ceiling is not a matter of being fiscally responsible. That's fiscally irresponsible if you decide that the government is not going to pay on its debts. What the Republican Party should be doing in this moment is saying, okay, we will raise the debt ceiling so long as you, the Democrats, agree to cut spending so we can actually get this growing debt under control. if we could cut spending, we could close the deficit, and we could get the spending under control. But the Republicans aren't going to do that because literally just when their guy was in office, they blew the debt out of control. So that's basically what's happening. Now, Republicans did come recently, and like I said, they pretty much caved on this and said, okay, well, we'll offer to extend it, suspend the debt ceiling for 3 months, right? So that would still require Democrats to figure out a way after 3 months to raise the debt ceiling, because the Democrats don't care about spending. That's just not in their ideology. And I just have to say, I'm getting to a place where if we as Americans don't hold these politicians accountable, spending is just going to continue to increase and increase and increase until a possible catastrophe could happen. The debt to GDP ratio right now, which is the amount of debt that we have compared to how much goods and services the United States produces every year annually, is 120%. So it's already above the amount that the United States government produces per year. The Democrats propose raising taxes in order to cover the budget shortfall. The Republicans propose, which I don't think that they actually propose that, because when they're in power, they never follow through with that, is cutting spending. I agree that the thing that we need to do is cut spending, but not the way the Republicans cut spending, because they don't cut spending, they increase spending. So that's the story with the debt ceiling right now. I already know that they're not going to just not make payments because the United States government is able to make payments by just going into debt more. So they're not going to stop making payments, even if there was some, and I think this is a wee little 0.000000001% chance that Congress doesn't act in enough time to raise the debt ceiling. It would only be temporarily. It wouldn't be like Greece, where Greece legitimately just could not pay. It would only be temporarily until Congress got together and decided to raise the debt ceiling. So that's the story of the debt ceiling. I'm hoping that we can get a real movement. I don't care if it has to be in the Republican Party, but a real movement that says, okay, stop spending the amount of money that you spend, and let's get this budget under control.